Assalamu alaikum everyone. एक मिनट देना, वो स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं. Okay. So first of all, this is not. Please don't expect this to be like a guest paper of any sort. Okay. Now, if you've solved enough past papers, you would know that all the topics that are tested in paper 1 are not tested again. Okay, they're not tested in paper 2. All right, number 1. Acha, my views on P1. Don't ask me for the expected threshold, but I will say that P1 was not difficult. Okay, it was not difficult. It was on the easier side considering how difficult papers have been. I don't think paper 1 was a difficult paper. Yes, there were some difficult questions, which you should always expect. You should always expect some difficult questions, some challenging questions. Okay, the paper is considered difficult when there are a lot of difficult questions and just a couple of easy questions. But I've gone through paper 1. I've seen all of it, and in fact, I'm looking at it right now. I don't think it was a difficult paper. Okay. Also, considering that it's a non-calculator paper, even with that taken into account, I don't think it was a difficult paper. Okay. Acha, but here's the thing. If let's say you haven't done well, see the topics that were recently added, like for example, equation of circle. There was a fairly easy question on equation of circle. Polynomial was expected. Finding the equation of the polynomial was also expected. In fact, I think we've done such questions as well. Disguised quadratics, very expected. Then linear law, also expected. Yes, GP I think was difficult, but everything else was fairly easy. So it's not a kind of question where you would say that not having a calculator was a major problem. Yes, I think when you have a calculator, there are a lot of answers that you can check. Okay, I'm talking about paper 12. Okay, I'm talking about paper 12. I'm not talking about paper 11 or 13. I'm talking about paper 12. So now here's the thing. All the topics that haven't been tested in paper 12 are the ones that I will now be included in paper 22. Okay, in the mocks that I will be taking. Okay, acha. Also, I forgot to mention this. If you guys would like the stream, I would appreciate that, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. Okay, now let's talk about. So you guys will find this Excel sheet. There's a link in description which will take you to a folder, and in that folder you guys will find this Excel sheet. So basically what I've done in this Excel sheet is I've written down all the topics, okay, and I've also listed down all the concepts that are found in these topics, okay. Now for some topics I haven't done that, like for example linear law, okay, topics that have been tested already or topics that don't have a lot of concepts within them, I haven't written that, okay. So you guys can download this, you guys can download this, you will find it, you'll find a link to it in the description, okay. So here's the thing. Now, for those of you who appeared for variant 1, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to copy this, okay? So I'll explain to you guys what you have to do. I want you guys to copy this, okay? Make a list of all the topics that have already been tested, okay? Write them down. And then all the topics that haven't been tested are the ones that you will expect that you should expect for the other variant, okay? So those of you who appeared for variant 11, ये मैं उनके लिए बता रहा हूँ, because in this video I'm only going to be going over variant 2. I will only be talking about variant 2, okay? But for those of you who have appeared for any other variant, like for example whether it's variant 1 or variant 3, this is what you guys need to do, okay? Okay, so I'm going to change this to paper 11 and then this to paper 21. Okay, right now what I'll do is I will be going over paper 22, as in what topics you can expect in paper 22. Okay, so I'd appreciate if you guys pay attention. What's done is done. There's no point in crying over it. Okay, what you can do is you can work hard and make paper 2 do well in paper. You can work hard and make sure you do well in paper 2. Okay, now, so let's go over all the topics that were tested. Okay, and then we'll talk about all the topics that we can expect. So first of all, I would like if you guys can take a screenshot of this also and share it with your friends and whoever it is that is basically appearing for AdMaths, okay, so that they also benefit from it. Okay. So the first question was modulus cubic equations from the graph. Okay, so you had to find out the cubic equation, the two possible cubic equations by looking at the graph. Okay. The second question was a disguised quadratics, a standalone question on disguised quadratics, which is kind of rare, but I think considering now that you cannot use a calculator, that's probably the reason why they gave you that. And then the third question was equation of circle. So one part of coordinate geometry that has been tested and one part of, you can see that polynomials to pura aa gaya because there's a follow-up question on polynomials, but as far as quadratics is concerned, disguised quadratics has been tested. So you can see here, disguised quadratics is something that has been tested. And also when it comes to coordinate geometry, so coordinate geometry of a circle has been tested, although you can expect coordinate geometry of a straight line to come in the next paper. Then the next question was integration within limits and identity. Okay. And then after that you had, so this is not in any order, but after that the question that you had was once again polynomial, remainder and factor theorem. And then you had linear law, and then there was a question on GP, which included sum to infinity also. Yeah. And then there was a question on differentiation, where you had to find out, and also a question on small change. Okay. And you also had to find out, just a minute. So then there was a question on functions, circular measure, vectors, and finally stationary point and finding the nature. Okay. Stationary point and finding the nature. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about all the topics that haven't been tested. Okay. Let's talk about all the topics that haven't been tested, starting with quadratics. So discriminant applied to a curve and straight line, which could later on lead to a quadratic inequality. That part hasn't been tested, so expect that in paper 2. Curve sketching also. Yeah, differentiation was quotient rule. You're right. Differentiation was actually quotient rule along with small change. So let me add that. This was quotient rule with small change. Small change or approximate change, whatever you want to call it. Also integration to find equation of the curve and stationary value. Yeah, I think that was the second last question. Let me just double check. One second. Yeah, integration and stationary point. Okay, सही. Yeah, it was quotient rule. Anyway, so let's talk about quadratics that hasn't been tested. So this part of quadratics where you apply discriminant to a curve in a straight line, which could later on lead to a quadratic inequality, hasn't been tested. Curve sketching also hasn't been tested. However, disguised quadratic has been tested. So maybe there can maybe a question on a standalone question on quadratics inequality. Okay, so यहाँ पे quadratic inequality भी add कर लो to be on the safe side. Quadratic. There can be a standalone question on quadratic inequality, or there can be a question of discriminant, which could later on lead to a quadratic inequality. Okay. Then logs word problems. So logs word problems hasn't been tested. So these are already kind of rare. You know, you have those bacteria population related questions. Okay. Not very common, but something that hasn't been tested. So you can expect that. And there hasn't been a question on logs also. So you can expect simplifying logs, a question on simplifying logs also. Okay, so you can expect that. And also solving exponential equations using rules of log. So expect that also, solving exponential equations, or perhaps solving logarithmic equations also. Okay, solving exponential / logarithmic equations using rules of logs. Okay, so this is also something that has gone untested. Although there was a question on linear law, but obviously that's not enough. There's got to be more. So you can expect that. Then there is coordinate geometry of a straight line. So as far as coordinate geometry of a straight line is concerned, you could have gradient, you could have midpoint, you could have area, you could have perpendicular bisector. So all that stuff can be tested in when it comes to coordinate geometry of a straight line. So binomial theorem, as far as binomial theorem is concerned, so all of binomial theorem can be tested because no part of binomial theorem has been tested. Okay. Arithmetic progression, expect a question on arithmetic progression because there hasn't been a question on arithmetic progression. There has been a question on geometric progression and sum to infinity, but there hasn't been a question on arithmetic progression. So definitely expect that. Okay. Once again, permutations, combination, no part of permutation combination has been tested. So expect all of it to be part of paper 2. Okay. Acha. Then there is trigonometric graphs. Now, as far as I can see, trigonometry hasn't been tested a lot. Okay, so I'm expecting. So, acha, there was no question on trigonometric equation also. So, there can be a question on trigonometric equations. ठीक है, trigonometric equations भी आ सकता है. There can be a question on curve sketching, and there can be a question on finding the equation by looking at the sketch. Okay, so I'm expecting any of these three. Okay. Yeah, proving identities was tested. I can see that. Identities and integration within limits. You had to integrate sine within the limits pi and 0. That was tested. I can see that. So expect maybe trigonometry, expect trigonometric equations, maybe have to alter the range or stuff like that. Expect curve sketching. In fact, definitely expect curve sketching. And also maybe, if not curve sketching, then maybe you are already given the curve and you have to find out the equation of the curve. Okay, so one of the two you should definitely expect. ठीक हो गया? अच्छा. Here. Acha, what's that? Proving of trigonometry. Yeah, okay, I know. Okay. Now, functions. Now, I can see that there was a question on functions. I can see that as far as functions is concerned, there was a healthy question on functions. You had to find out the range. You had to find out the inverse function. But maybe there can still be a question on composite function. You never know. There can still be a question on composite function. Okay, so prepare for that. And also prepare for maybe a mixture of functions with quadratics and functions. Yeah, functions mixed with quadratics. But if not domain and range, then maybe a composite function related question. Okay, so in P1, the answer space run out, so I completed my solution in extra sheet I had mentioned there. Yeah, that, as long as you've mentioned it, that's not a problem. Okay, now let's talk about vectors. So the question of vectors that was tested is basically the part where you have to find out lambda and mu. Okay. And there's another part of vectors which basically deals with velocity vectors. Now, velocity vectors, or it could also be that you have to find out resultant, finding resultant and bearing. Okay, so that is also something that you can expect. Okay, there was a question in May, June 2022, I think. So maybe something like that. And we've practiced this also. We've practiced velocity vectors. So we've done questions like these. So that part of vectors you should definitely expect. Okay. So then there is differentiation. Now, only a small fraction of differentiation has been tested. The part where you find out the stationary curve, stationary value, and the part where you find out approximate change. So a lot of it hasn't been tested, like for example, equation of tangent and normal, so you should expect that. Rates of change, you should definitely expect that. Applications of stationary value, you know, the question that we just solved in the mock where you're given a solid and you have to find out its maximum volume. So stuff like that where you have to find out maximum volume, minimum area, stuff like that. That is something that you should definitely expect in paper 2. Now, integration. Now, I can see that integration, as in finding the equation of the curve, has been tested. Part 2 of velocity vectors. Chalo, theek hai, I'll do that. Theek hai. Integration, I can see that integration within limits has been tested. Finding the equation of the curve has been tested. But what hasn't been tested is basically area under the curve and hence find. Okay, so that is something that you must expect in integration. Okay, then there is kinematics. So no part of kinematics has been tested at all. So you can expect a full, in fact, definitely expect a full length question on kinematics because, like I said, no part of it has been tested in paper 1. So there could be a question where you have to find out maybe draw a curve, which you then have to convert it to maybe a distance time graph and then a velocity time graph, acceleration time graph, or maybe one of the three. Or maybe you may have a question where you have to find out velocity, distance traveled by integration, who knows? Okay, but there's got to be a question on kinematics, that's for sure. You can bet on it. Not that I'm encouraging that you bet, but I'm just trying to tell you guys how sure I am that there will be a question on kinematics. ठीक है? Okay, so that's about it. Now, as far as students who did not appear for this variant are concerned, so you can do this drill for yourself where you write in this column, you write down all the topics that have been tested. Okay, you can pick the topics from here, write them down in this column. Okay, variant 3 students can also do the same. Okay, in fact, let me set it up for you guys, and you guys will find this file. There's a link to it in the description. ठीक है, मैं अभी ये वाली फाइल भी अपलोड कर दूंगा. ठीक है. So anyway, so let me know if you guys want another mock. Just say yes if you do. Do you guys want me to take another mock? Just say yes if that's what you want. Sir, where can I do velocity vectors and kinematics from? You will find a video. You will find a video of velocity vectors. Velocity vectors pe to I've made so much content already. I don't think there's anything that I haven't covered as far as velocity vectors are concerned. I've made so much content on it. But as far as kinematics is concerned, yeah, I've done plenty of videos on kinematics also. Okay. So I think I'll take another mock inshallah on Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, let's keep a stream these 3 days back to back. Okay. Mock every day. That's not a bad idea. Vaise. We can have a mock, but let's have more than 2 mocks. Let's have 3 mocks maybe. Okay, so let's have a mock on Friday. Let's have a mock on Sunday. On Saturday, I'll do a topical stream. Okay, most likely permutation and combination. Or maybe what I can do is I can do 2 topics at a time. Yeah, maybe permutation combination combined with kinematics. Kya khayal hai? It's not a bad idea. Like tomorrow I'm busy. Kal मैं नहीं कर सकता live stream. ठीक है. कल मैं ज़्यादा ये कर सकता हूँ कि मॉक करा लूँ फिर अगले दिन उसको डिस्कस कर लें. बट फ़ायदा नहीं है ना, दिन ज़ाया जाएगा. ठीक है, there is no point. So let's resume inshallah from Friday. ठीक है. चलें. So that's it from my side, and I would appreciate if you guys share this with whoever it is that is appearing for Ad Maths and has their paper 2. ठीक है, मैं भी इसका अपना स्क्रीनशॉट लेके अपने Instagram पे डाल देता हूँ. ठीक है. So that's it from my side. I'll see you guys inshallah in the next stream. ठीक है. So take care fellas. Allah Hafiz.